Welcome to Almost Pro, the podcast where we explore the untold stories of athletes who didn't follow the traditional path and the experts who've walked alongside them. Today's episode is about something a lot of athletes experience, but few fully understand. What happens when your body stops doing the thing it's always done and done well? Our guest, Andy Bass, was drafted into professional baseball and on track for the career he'd worked toward his whole life. But in his very first outing, got the yips and struggled to perform. What followed wasn't a performance issue on the surface, but rather a loss of trust in his body. Since then, Andy has rebuilt his career in a completely different way, now working at the highest level of the game, helping athletes navigate the exact challenges he once faced. This is a conversation about the yips, overthinking, identity, and the science of getting out of your own head. And there's no one we'd rather have this conversation with than you, Andy. Welcome.
Thank you all very much for having me. Great to see you all this evening, at least this evening for me.
It's so good to see you. Andy, I'm curious, when you got drafted, did it feel like you'd made it or like you were just getting started at that point?
If I'm being honest, it felt like I'd made it. It was a surreal experience for me. My entire life, I'd never been the best player on any team, baseball, basketball, and football. Even my later years of high school, later years of college, I had moments of success, but the mental game always brought me down. There was always a sense of imposter syndrome. And I think that was kind of the beginning of the end, was thinking that, oh, this is the pinnacle, rather than thinking this is the beginning, because then imposter syndrome set in. So when I got drafted, it was one of those things where it was like, oh, you are playing with house money now, rather
Mm.
than, hey, set your mind right to try to dominate, rather than just be complacent or capitulate to the fact that nobody in your life thought that you would have a chance to play professional baseball, and now you are. And I think I fell into that trap.
So, how did you, when you were growing up playing baseball, I guess two-part question, how did you start your journey in baseball? And then what was that like progressing from one stage to the next with this, I guess, perceived doubt of the outcome along the way?
Um, Sports were always important in my life. My parents will listen to this, I'm sure. We grew up on a farm, and so that always took precedence, and education did too. If homework wasn't done, we weren't going to practice, or we were doing homework on the way to practice. So for me, like, sport never really took that big of a place. Like, from my childhood, it was more something fun. But then I was moved into a private school going into middle school, where I'd always kind of been the big fish in the small pond in elementary school. And now all of a sudden it's, wow, these kids are taking sport really, really seriously. And then I swung completely into that direction. Instead of finding a middle ground between where I was and where they were, I went past them. I would throw up before sixth grade basketball games. Like, that's how seriously I was taking it. I was caring about it way too much. I was wrapping all of my identity into it. And I think at the time it was because I was struggling in school a little bit, moving into a private school where I wasn't used to doing the schoolwork. So it was like, oh, well, I need to put my identity into something that I can be good at. But when you're throwing up before a sixth grade basketball game, you are taking it way too seriously, way too young. It was not anybody's doing but my own. It was purely my own doing, especially retroactively looking back.
Did you have any true passion for any of these sports? So baseball or any other sports that you were playing in?
It's funny. I think when you talk to a lot of baseball players that played baseball at a high level, their first love is typically basketball.
Yeah,
Baseball players, as skillful as it tends to be, they tend to be multifaceted athletes. My
yeah.
father played college basketball. And so, and it's just, I mean, basketball when you're a kid, like, it's free flow. It's more of an open skill. Baseball is kind of dull when you're little until you get older. So basketball is my true passion. And then as I got older, I realized that I was just kind of a fairly stock, kind of tall dude that was kind of fast, could kind of shoot. So that doesn't really lend itself well to the next level of basketball, but I can always throw a baseball hard. So I basically came to the realization of, okay, Robert Frost, two roads diverged in yellow wood. I still kept playing basketball, but I knew that this bifurcation was going to be toward baseball.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Do you know, Andy, I don't even know how long we've been recording, but you have dropped some massive lines already. I think, to recognize imposter syndrome takes a decent level of introspection to look back at, sixth grade Andy and thinking about those moments before basketball must be tough to think about now, I'm sure, or certainly, in different moments of your life, I'm sure you've looked back at that and thought, "Oh my, there were signs." Was there anyone that stopped you along your sporting journey that could see those signs for you before you were drafted?
Retroactively, people have told me that, but
Yeah, right.
nobody stood in at the time to say anything.
Right.
So when I was in college, I would have coaches say, "Yeah, like we knew you got so nervous." And I was like, "Then why didn't you ask me?" The
Yeah.
joke when I was in high school before baseball games, and I apologize that I'm dropping nausea and projectile vomiting on your audience twice within a span of 10 minutes.
Got this.
But it'd be 15 minutes before my start, and my coach would be like, "Where's Bass?" And my starting catcher would be like, "He's in the locker room doing his thing." And once again, different time, even though not that long ago. So I think there was an understanding. There just wasn't a courage isn't the right word, but there wasn't a desire to step in and say, "Man, what's going on? That's not normal." So I talking about it years later is actually easier. In the moment, it was total shame. I felt complete shame about it, but I couldn't help it.
I bet. And I wonder though, even if someone did step in, whether you would have sought any assistance or whether that's just what you thought it was for you.
It possibly could have been. I'm sitting here, 2026, hoping that the 17, 18-year-old Andy would say, "Yes, I need to talk about this." But hindsight is 2020. I truly wish I had more of a direct answer for you, but I don't,
Yeah.
specifically because, yes, sports psych and mental health were becoming a thing back then. This is 2006, 2007, 2008, but it's come a long way since then. So we were kind of crawling so we could run right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's come a long way because it needed to, but it's come a long way fast. So you're right. As much as it doesn't sound that long ago, it's a very, very long time in the mental health in sports space. Entirely true. Entirely true. Can you tell me, you you're drafted. I imagine the way you've explained family, there were lots of people really happy for you.
But yeah, very much so. And I'll kind of go to the end of this before we kind of go back to the beginning. So when you talk about people being happy for me, and I mentioned earlier, like nobody was pushing me to do sports, as at least succeed in sports. My
Mm.
parents were very much about be educated, be well rounded, be disciplined, be dedicated. We don't care if you're an all state pitcher or a starting basketball player. You need to have something that makes you better every day you wake up. Wake up, read a book, go to practice, read a book, just be the best you can be. So I did play for the Chicago White Sox, and they released me in 2012. I'd set out what I set out to do. I hadn't overcome the yips, but I could get players out. I remember calling my father. They'd released me. I had a flight out of Phoenix going back to Nashville. I was going to land at like 2 in the morning. I'm calling my dad. And I'm literally in tears. And I'm just like, "I'm so sorry that I've disappointed you all." And my dad says, "Andy, you've gone farther in sport than anyone in this family. Like not just like that we thought you could go. You've gone further than anyone in this family. We're so proud of you." So yeah, there's that end of it where it was like, yes, they were happy and proud of me, and they never pushed me to do it. This was all my own external forces that I was putting on myself for no reason other than I was overthinking things, paralysis by analysis.
Yeah. Not me taking a little moment to blink back some tears. I imagine that call with dad was pretty special.
It was very, very special. It's very I still remember it to this day. It's one of the most powerful moments of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll remember it long after this call, let me tell you. Um, we've touched on your journey now for baseball. What is the Yips and what's your experience with the Yips?
The yibs is it has nothing to do with any type of physical injury. Certainly nothing like cognitive or mental with some kind of injury to that perspective. It's purely psychological. And I say that if it's a purely psychological origin, then it has to be a psychological solution.
Mm,
And with the yips, I think it started in golf with golfers not being able to hit down a knockdown shot or knockdown putt from like 3 feet away. In baseball, it can take many different forms. It can be a second baseman that can't throw the ball to first base. They just shoot it into the first base stands. All the fans are like ducking, trying to get out of the way because they know this guy has the yips. With catchers, it could be a catcher just not being able to lob the ball back to the. They can throw a 90-mile-an-hour strike to second base right on the money to catch a stealing runner, but they can't just lob the ball 50 miles an hour back. For me, it took the form of I just could not throw a strike. I wasn't yes, I would beam some batters in pro ball, but I wasn't throwing it to the backstop. I wasn't throwing it 45 feet and it was looking like a cricket ball and bouncing into the catcher. I just could not find the strike zone, and it happened immediately. And I know we have an Atlanta Braves fan on the call right here. I was
We
never
do.
Greg Maddux. And Greg Maddux, for your listeners, like the guy could put it wherever he wanted. He was a magician on the mound. I was never Greg Maddux, but I could throw the ball over the plate. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden in pro ball, with all of these thoughts of imposter syndrome, you've made it. So you're capitulating the fact that you don't need to get better. And then all of a sudden, bang, I cannot find the strike zone immediately. It was completely psychological. It had nothing to do with mechanics. I'd just been playing college baseball 2 weeks prior and I was
Yeah.
throwing strikes. And
Yeah.
now, fast forward 2 weeks, just because the setting changes, it's still 60 feet, 6 inches. Now, all of a
Mhm.
sudden, I have no idea where the ball's going.
Mhm. Mhm. Did you know what was happening at the time?
Fear.
Yeah.
No, I like looking, it took me a little while, but it was fear and embarrassment. And the first night that it happened, when I threw 15 balls in a row without throwing a strike, and when I was about to walk in the winning run without having thrown a strike, this is probably the most embarrassing thing that I thought. We were in New York, in Staten Island. We were going to drive back to Poughkeepsie, New York. It was like a 3 hour drive, maybe not even that much. I was going to pack up all my stuff from my host family's house, and I was just going to drive away in the middle of the night. Wasn't going to tell anybody. I was just going to, go AWOL, drive as far as I could down to Nashville, get a hotel, and leave. And my brother talked me out of it. He said, "It's just one time. You've got to stick this out." So yeah, the biggest thing I felt was embarrassment. It was only like later on down the road where I was like, something's going on, but nobody's helping me with this.
And the noticing that you've got it's a mental impairment, not a physical impairment. Was that immediate for you? You knew that that's what was happening?
As time goes on, it's kind of one of those things where the more you access a memory, it changes. When you reconstruct memory, it changes. So I think, 15 years on, I say to myself that I knew that was happening, but that's why eyewitness testimony is not really taken in court because it's so fallible. I
Mm.
want to say that I recognized it, but I'm not really sure. I think I was just so honestly depressed that I
Yeah.
didn't have the metacognitive abilities to even think about something like that.
I'm just thinking back to what you've said so far with putting pressure on yourself from such a young age. And a lot of the times, like you can only apply so much pressure on anything for so long, right?
Mhm.
And you've been putting this pressure on yourself from such a young age. It's actually really amazing that you even got past into that college zone of baseball and then into the major leagues because often what happens is there's so much pressure applied during those college years that we see a lot of athletes drop out, but you've applied even more pressure past that point that it's really listening to it back, it's in some ways no surprise that there would have been some kind of yips or breaking point or something like that to happen because that's a completely imbalanced uh, development through your sporting journey of entirely working on, okay, well, what's the technical skills that I need to perform well with no support happening psychologically. Not to anyone's failure to do so, but just for the fact that systems through sport, particularly, even 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of psychological help for athletes at across any levels of sport. So not so much a question, just remarkable that you even got to where you were, and that is something that you should truly be proud of that you were able to get to there.
That means so much coming from you, Laura, especially knowing your story as well. So thank you so much for those kind words. And I think that is antithesis to kind of one of those coaching paradigms or coaching aphorisms, which is how do you create a diamond? You add pressure to coal. No, eventually it'll crack. That's not how human beings work. That's not how emotions work. That's not how the soul works. Too much
Yeah.
pressure does not create a diamond.
Yeah, yeah, and human diamonds are we like, at the end of the day, the comparison is brutal. Can you tell me, Andy, in all of this, so this exact phase of your life, what was your identity as an athlete? How were you identifying with yourself? I suspect imposter syndrome lives fairly high in the labels, but how did you see yourself as an athlete?
I never neglected my education for my athleticism. I went to Davidson College, which is a very high academic institution, so I always wanted to do both. Um, but it was this kind of I mentioned in middle school, like my academics suffered, and I needed to put more into my athleticism, and that kind of had these residual effects into high school. And then now I started to learn how to study, and so I could have put a lot more of my identity into the education. But your formative years are so powerful. Like I don't think we do enough, especially in America, about talking about what childhood little t trauma, big T trauma is. I was applying trauma to myself with the identity I was putting on myself as an athlete. And even though kept looking into the education piece, I never got past that like big T trauma of athletics that I put on myself. So I still kind of had this, the duality, the dualism, little Descartes here of like education and athletics. But then all of a sudden now I'm doing pretty well education wise. And then that residual athletic identity mindset that was starting in middle school, now that starts to take a hit. And then I put
Mm,
even more into it.
right. Okay. So your academics got the best of you?
That my academics started to do way better, but the
Yeah.
athletics started to suffer a little bit. And so then I doubled down. My education was still going to be fine, but then I tried to bolster too much into the athletic identity. I didn't sacrifice the education, but then that little T trauma from sixth grade rears its ugly head when I'm 18 years old.
Tough. That is so tough, Andy.
And now, time for a short break. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to join the Almost Pro community and stay up to date with the latest episodes and news. To find out more or to apply to be a guest, visit almostpropodcast.com today.
The bit we'd love to chat to you about now is the system and what was tried to help you, if
Yeah.
that's okay.
Perfect. Good. So we can get into some motor learning stuff here. I am rubbing my hands ready for this and
He
some sports
loves it.
psychology.
He loves it.
Um, just like anything, nobody that attempted to help me had any ill will. And the intention was always to help me. The action was actually very deleterious, but the intention was to help me. So I had the yips. I couldn't hit water if I fell out of a boat. The drills that were done with me were, well, number one, nobody really asked me how I was feeling. It was the age old kind of toxic masculinity, deny your feelings and act like you have answers at all times. But so the first drill that was done with me was I was put on the mound 60 feet, 6 inches away from the plate. And as a reminder, the catcher has a glove that's pretty big, but I can't even come close to hitting his body. They put a tiny baseball on a tee, which is about 3 feet off the ground. So the target is even smaller, and I can't even hit a big target. So that's what was done with me. Looking back on it, after my education at Tennessee with motor learning and sports psychology, they should have taken the challenge away and they should have taken the outcome away. And I don't mean that in a way of like, oh, pat you on the shoulder, everything's going to be fine. I was so internally focused. And when we're focused internally, it inhibits the automaticity of the action. So I
Mhm.
didn't know what was going on. So every time I'm lifting my leg, I'm thinking about where my knee is in space, where my elbow is in space, what my hips are doing. And that's the metaphorical equivalent of trying to walk while thinking about what your hips and your knees and your heels are doing. You walk like Frankenstein's monster. I
Mm.
wish they had just put a net 10 feet in front of me, big old 8 foot tall net, and say, just throw into this net doing your normal pitching motion. And that would have like quelled that hypothesis testing within me. The second thing I wish they'd done is $15 word, but with this idea of variation and differential learning. Basically, what that is they kept trying to get me to repeat my movement pattern. We cannot do that. They kept dragging film up. They kept dragging these very blocked training exercises up. So have the net up there and say, hey man, you throw from over the top. Try throwing submarine. Shoot, try throwing left-handed. Try throwing with your foot swinging out really far. Try it with your feet really close together, really far away. Try these varying methods because that would have actually gotten me out of my own head because now my balance system, my vestibular system is kicking into high gear. My prefrontal cortex, my conscious thought has to dim. So now I'm not thinking as much. So I'm getting back into that automatic mode. So I will kind of cut off that diatribe there. But scientifically, that's what I wish had been done with me at that time.
Yeah, you need a little bit of freedom, to put it
Exactly.
in layman's terms, you need a bit of freedom back in your motion so that you're not behaving like a robot, really. Um, I'm curious though, when when you did have the yips, and this is current, but when you did have the yips, and when they're trying these drills unsuccessfully, was there anything that you were doing individually to try and resolve the issue? Because you've mentioned about you being the main driver of your outcomes. So was there anything when you did have the yips and when they're giving you these tasks that you thought, you know what, I'm going to work overtime, seeing as that's seemed a patterned kind of mindset that you've developed? What were you doing to try and resolve it?
Um, well, one, I was shutting down, I was isolating, but paradoxically, I was also trying to people please. So I was going to my coach, my
Mm.
pitching coach, every day saying, "What do you got for me?" And I say people were trying to help me. I will say this gentleman, he will remain unnamed, didn't really. He was kind of through with it by the end. But I fell into isolating away from the field and people pleasing at the field, and honestly, just trying to get through the day. Whenever there was a possible chance I could pitch, I never slept. My hands would shake on the way to the field, like tremors. So really, it was kind of a weird thing if I would fall into like, oh, what can I do to like make you seem that I'm trying to work on this? And also, I don't care. I just want this to be over. It was a weird dichotomous feeling of trying to show somebody that I really didn't care that much about, that I'm trying, and also like, can this please just, if I'm not on the mound, I really didn't even care how I did. Like, can somebody just hit into a double play, or shoot, can I just do so poorly that the manager comes and takes me out of the game?
Yeah,
Like, it
were
was
you just
not self-sabotage, but like a sense of learned hopelessness.
Yeah. Were you completely exhausted by the end of all of this? When it finally came to a close, were you somewhere between relieved but recognizing total exhaustion?
Same thing, holding 2 conflicting thoughts in my head, relieved and exhausted. Like, I know I
Yeah.
did poorly, but I can't wait that this is over. Like, I don't even wanna be a part of this anymore. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even
yeah,
want to
that
be thought about this, let alone in their space about this.
I was in complete fear. I was in fight or flight mode at all times, and usually it was flight.
Yeah, yeah. That's massive, Andy. Massive.
is there anything that, with the knowledge that you're equipped with now, what would you do differently if you could go back? Like, how would you
Mhm.
balance your schedule? What would you do different?
Well, if I could literally hop in Doc Brown's DeLorean from Back to the Future and pop, like,
That'd be
my
very cool.
mind right now into, like, 22-year-old Andy's body, I would say, "Hey, here's all this sports psych and motor learning knowledge, like, forget what your coaches tell you, just do this." But if it was just me hopping back and talking to my 22-year-old self, I would honestly tell him, I would say, "You don't need this."
Yeah, right.
I would say, "You don't need this. You will be fine without this, and you're going to be fine without this. You have a chance to do something that very few people get to do." And I'm not saying enjoy it in the way you as in me, enjoy it in the way that a 12-year-old self would, but and I would say, "You're only gonna do this for this season, and then you're gonna be with the White Sox for a couple months, because you're just not that good at the end of the day, and that's fine. You're way better than anybody thought you could be, and you are way better than you ever thought you could be. Just lean into it and ride this out, because it ain't gonna last too much longer, and you are gonna be fine."
Andy, how does one purchase you as an audio content that permanently streams through their
Right?
head? Far out. If we could go back and
Thank you.
tell us, oh, it's just your perspective is brilliant. The question that you were asked, you very easily could have said, "Oh, try this technique or try that technique," but you're so far above that. You're at the point of saying, "No, no, it's not about techniques. It's about life on a full spectrum, and this is a season in it." And it's actually it will absolutely be part of your story, but it isn't your story.
And a psychological theme is called the end of history moment. And we always hear this. We lose a job, we get broken up with, we get fired, whatever it is, we have to move. Oh my God, this is the end of everything. Like, I'm so down, I'm so out. How often do we hear anybody say, I lost that job? Best thing that could have happened to me. I then got my dream job 6 months later. I got the yips and I got to play pro ball, but more importantly, I got the yips. That got me interested in sports psychology. Best thing that could have happened to me.
Come on. So good. So tell us, where are you now? And how has this become part of this chapter for you?
Sure, I am going to definitely make this as short a Wikipedia as possible. So
No, no,
get
no,
done,
please don't. Please don't.
get done, with, get done with the White Sox. I always thank my family. I thank my brother and my father so far. My mother helped me find the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I had a bachelor's in psychology and philosophy from a liberal arts degree at Davidson College. Love Davidson. You aren't going to get a job with a bachelor's from a liberal arts school in psychology and philosophy, at least back then. So I had to get a grad degree. So I go there knowing a little bit about sports psychology. I'd learned a little bit about it in the offseason between when I was at the Rays and I played as a free agent with the White Sox. I go there, I start getting into it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really neat. And then I start learning about what motor behavior is, the science of skill acquisition, and how the marriage of those two, how the psychological aspects of like, why is this happening? And the motor behavior aspects of how is it happening? And then at the time, what you always heard was, hey, if you want to be a sports psych consultant, like there's just not a lot of jobs out there. This was true at the time. If you want to be one of these, your best bet is to go and work at a university and work your way into the athletic department. I had gotten the great opportunity from my professors at Tennessee to teach some classes, do some research. Wow, being a professor sounds kind of nice. I'm not going to break the bank, but I'm only going to work like 4 weeks a year. That's a little hyperbolic, but but so I get admitted to get my PhD at UT, working with the esteemed Dr. Jeffrey Fairbrother. Once again, I always want to call it good people. PhD, 70% motor behavior, 30% sports psych. Master's, 70 sports psych, 30 motor behavior. I run into Dr. Bernie Holiday of the Pittsburgh Pirates, my first semester on my PhD. I am politely annoying for the next several years. They hire me like 2 days after I finish my dissertation. This is not, I don't know how interesting this is, but I didn't know they wanted to hire me because I would come around like an internship program. I am applying to all these universities. I'm doing writing research statements, philosophy statements, teaching statements, all through the fall of 2017. And all of a sudden I reach out to the Pirates like, hey, would y'all hire me as a consultant? This has been a month of my life I've spent going on interviews, writing and everything. And then they email back, oh no, we want to hire you full time.
Oh my
That would have
God.
been useful a month ago. But so let me expedite this. So I start with the Pirates in 2018. I coordinate in the minor leagues in 18 and 19. 2020, baseball shuts down. I go to our alternate site. 21 through 25, I'm our full-time major league mental skills consultant. And this year, I was promoted to an assistant director. I'm now big leagues, AAA, rehab, basically just going around our system. And the last part of this is currently finishing a master's in clinical mental health because I just see the need for that to have an embedded counselor within the Pirates. So all the pretentious letters after my name, and I will cut it off there.
No, like, have you noticed it as well, Francis? The
Oh, man.
difference in the way that you speak, Andy, about your baseball playing journey and what you're doing now. Now, I wouldn't wish that kind of pressure to be applied to anybody in any sport ever. What I will say though is the outcome is magnificent. Sometimes people go through things so that they can do great things from that experience. And you are doing great things from that experience. And you are creating very real, lasting change in a sporting space that so desperately needed it. And further to that, the change in your body language, the change in your expression from you talking about what you're doing now to what you were doing then is so heartwarming. You can tell that this is where you've found your passion, where you've found your drive, and it's awesome to listen to. No need to cut yourself off. We could listen to this, or we could keep listening to this.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
And
thank
you're
you. I do want to say it takes one to know one, knowing your story. That means so much coming from the two of you and the work that you all are doing. So that is not me typically reciprocating with a compliment. I do want to literally say thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would sum up what Laura said by saying you are very obviously a man walking in his purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's incredible to watch. When we put all of this together, Andy, what would you say to someone who is 22-year-old you, who's in the baseball experience after having done lots of the right things to lead to that outcome, only for it to change right before your eyes? What advice would you give to someone who is stuck or overthinking or has the yips or is potentially in a coaching environment that's not growing them?
I do want to caveat with that. I mean, the current collegiate landscape in America is so vastly different than what it was when I was going through it. And even the
Yeah.
professional ranks, the professional ranks have shrunk. Um, but if I were to tell anybody going through anything similar to me, we did a couple studies at the University of Tennessee, and I always want to ensure that anecdotal evidence is fantastic, as I'm sure you both know. But I remember the last time we spoke, you all were going to listen to a dissertation. And so I always want to back these things up with research. We did a couple studies at Tennessee looking at the release of being released from professional baseball. And this could be professional baseball, this could be collegiate baseball. And I think it's probably more easier to do in collegiate baseball when I give this answer. The thing that we found that made the transition out of professional baseball easier, and I use air quotes, and also made them perform better at the time was they had a backup plan. They had a
Mm,
different identity. They had something else that drove them or that they were working toward. Now, that could be something as serious or as long term as, hey, during the off season, I'm studying for the LSAT or the MCAT, or I'm doing an internship on Wall Street because I had a background in economics. Or it could be as something as trivial as when I go home or when I go back to the hotel or when I go back to the dorms, I really want to get good at pool. And so I'm going to spend an hour and a half working on billiards. But
mhm,
baseball, I'm sure like most sports, baseball is not a game of focus. Baseball is a game of refocus on a micro level and a macro level. And if there's nothing for you to disengage to, whether it's a separate identity, as in I'm working toward this internship or I'm working toward studying for this, or on a micro level of, all right, I had a really bad game either in college or in the pro level, particularly in the pro level where you play every day. All right, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to practice the guitar for 2 hours. I'm not going to look at film. I'm not going to read social media. So I think that's what I would tell people is, and people say, well, what about video games? I'm like, I love video games. I love all that stuff, but it's something where you really have to be truly engaged, like a different skill set, because they have found that when you learn a new skill or a new physical, motor, or cognitive skill, you actually create, neuroplasticity occurs. You're actually growing your brain. And
mhm.
I'm not sure if there's a better argument than that for that.
Exceptional. Andy, we have spoken on this podcast multiple times about identity and the association of being an athlete with you know becoming who we are, the way we introduce ourselves, the layer that we take into everything we do. And I think your answer just then is absolutely brilliant. And brilliant might be just how I sum up this episode with you, that your intelligence is exceptional, your heart is second to none. And as I said before, to talk to a man who's living in his purpose has been an absolute privilege from where I sit.
Thank you so much. And I think what you just said about the identity, and I'm not going to even try to think about who said this. The phrase is, we contain multitudes.
Yeah, yeah.
We are much more than the one thing that people know us for.
Absolutely.
Come, come on, that is so
Absolutely.
good. That is so good. Well, Andy, we're about to find out if you're going to be known for your quick fire responses to a game we like to call This or That. Have you heard of
Okay.
it?
I can take a guess, but I'd rather go in a little blind. This could be fun.
Love it. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. There are two possible answers for you to choose from, and we just want the one that comes to mind first. Let's do it. All right. Andy, sunset or sunrise?
Sunset.
Repetition or variation?
That's not a this or that. That's just a this. It's a variation.
I love it. Podcast or book?
Book.
That's okay. That's okay. Thinking or trusting?
Trusting.
City or beach?
Beach.
Game day or training?
I can't ask for caveats here, can I? I can't ask for context.
We end up about every single episode, I think, with this, that, or why not both. So if you
Okay.
need to answer both, you can.
I will say this instead of kind of both. You have to love training day to appreciate game day.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. Yeah. Entirely fair. All right. A little lighter. Sunshine or snow?
Snow.
Team bus or solo drive?
Solo drive.
You did it. That's the end. Thanks for playing This or That.
Andy, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. What's most powerful about Andy's journey is what he's gone through and what he's chosen to do with it after. It's an incredible journey through sport, and now he's helping athletes at the highest level do the same and continue to build their careers in a balanced, healthy way. It has been an absolute privilege to share the studio with you today, Andy, and we cannot wait to see where you go next.
Thank you all so much. An absolute privilege.
Thanks for listening to Almost Pro. If this episode resonates with you, share it with someone who might be feeling stuck in sport or beyond, because not every setback is the end of the road. Sometimes it's the beginning of something entirely different. And we'll see you next time.